You don't have to introduce me then if no one else is here.
Well, I want to welcome those of us who are here and then those of us who will watch on the podcast on YouTube to our final Elul learning series with Renne Bainvoll, who's going to teach us to make her delicious honey cake. And with that, I will pass it off to Renne to teach us all some amazing culinary skills.
Thank you, Ari. And of course, as many people know, I love to cook, and particularly in our culture, food and eating and cooking is a very big part of being Jewish. So it's only natural that we end something before the holidays with cooking, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to show you how to make a regular honey cake, how I make a regular honey cake. It can also be modified if people are gluten-free. You can make the honey cake with the same way, but using gluten-free flour. I make the honey cake using decaf coffee. If you have an aversion to coffee or you don't want to use coffee, you can also use tea, orange juice, or even water if you want to. I've never made it with anything besides the coffee, so I can't vouch for as far as taste, but you can make those kind of substitutions. So with that, I am putting in my mixer sugar. I know it looks like a lot of sugar, but it really is worth it. And I'm putting in 6 eggs, the whole egg. And I am told that the recipes are going to be available to you through Renne. So you can certainly get them. If there's a problem getting them and you want to contact me directly, that's also okay.
Renne, I don't know who Renne is.
Renne is, what's her official title, Ari?
She is the Director of Communications. We'll
Is
send
she
out
new?
an email. We've sent out one email, but we'll send it again with the instructions.
So I'm putting in the eggs, the sugar, and I'm putting in a teaspoon of baking soda, baking powder, and cinnamon. And again, you know, I mean, I don't know, when I cook or bake, you know, I start off kind of following a recipe, but then I always end up modifying it and adding more of things if it's a particular thing that I like the taste of. Like cinnamon is always something that I like. So even though the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, if you really like cinnamon and you want to put in more than 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, knock yourself out. You know, if you like the taste of ginger, you can throw in a little bit of ginger or a little bit of allspice as well. So now I have my spices, my eggs, and my sugar. And I'm going to put in the honey, and it's 2 cups of honey. The recipe makes about 6 loaves, plus or minus. It depends on how big of a loaf pan that you use also. And it's a great recipe. Once you figure out how many it makes in the kind of pan that you want to use, you can also double it or triple it, or in my case, as I did, quadruple it. All right, so I have all of that in there. And I'm going to give it a mix.
And is that a serious KitchenAid, Renne?
KitchenAid, yes, it's a serious mixer. It's a KitchenAid mixer. If it doesn't, you don't have to use a KitchenAid mixer. I generally actually use my hand mixer to bake most of the time, but because I was doing many honey cakes, I used my KitchenAid, and since I already had it out, I figured I might as well just keep using it. So now the other 3 things that are going in this cake are coffee, oil, and flour. And those 3 items basically get added in succession. So I put in a little bit of flour, and then I put in a little bit of the coffee, and then I slowly pour in a little of the oil. And then I give it a mish. And then you just kind of keep doing that until you finish with the flour, the coffee, and the oil. And again, if you don't want to use coffee, because I have grandkids now, I use decaf coffee. But if you don't want to use coffee, you can use tea. If you don't want to use coffee or tea, you can certainly try it with either orange juice or water. So it's a fairly simple recipe. And like I said, I made them the other day with my grandson who's 3. So if it's something, if you enjoy cooking with your children or grandchildren, it's very kid friendly. So when you're done mixing it, it basically comes out to be a pretty kind of thin brown color. And then you basically just put it in your loaf pans. I spray the loaf pans a little bit just so it doesn't stick too much when it comes out. And then you cook it in the oven for, depending on your oven, 45 to 55 minutes. Also depending on how spongy you want it or not. If you like to put almonds on the top of it, then when it's like 45 minutes cooked through, that's a good time to put some almonds on the top. And when it's done, this is what it looks like. And that is a honey cake. It freezes well. So if you make it in big batches for Rosh Hashanah and you want to make extra, so you have for, for Sukkot and for Yom Kippur, it freezes well. If you make it just, ahead of time for Rosh Hashanah and you put it in foil and put it in Tupperware, and it keeps well in the fridge as well. So that's the honey cake. Any questions? All good. All right, moving right along. Another enormous device that I have is my food processor. And what we're going to be making in the food processor are date balls. And they are very yummy. And they are very nutritious and very not hard to make. I took the liberty of toasting some almonds ahead of time. So I toasted 2 cups of almonds. And then you just put them in the food processor and grind them. Now, how fine you grind it is up to you. If you like to eat things that have more of a texture to them and you don't want to grind it really fine, you don't have to. You can grind it less fine. If you want to even buy ground nuts, you can, but then it doesn't have the toastiness that it has if you use regular almonds. So I'm going to just blend this a little bit more. Bear with the noise a second. Okay, and to the almonds, we are going to add a couple of loosely measured in my case. But and then we're going to add in there as well a couple tablespoons cocoa powder. We're going to add a couple tablespoons of cocoa powder. And then we add in, I'm putting in 2 cups of dates that are pitted. Don't make it with the pits in. It's way too high in dental fees. So all of that goes in the food processor. And we again mix it all together. And you want to get it so it gets down to being like a paste. So it's something pliable and you can put in your hands and kind of make it into a ball. My nuts are still a little bit too big for my taste, so I'm going to add a little bit more honey, and I'm going to add a little water also. Now, depending on how much of a chocoholic you are, in our house, anything that doesn't have chocolate in it is not considered a dessert. So we always add chocolate chips to everything. So once you take it out of your food processor and put it, you don't have to put the chocolate in the bowl, in the food processor, but once you put it in a bowl, you can add in some chocolate chips. And again, you can see it's kind of like sticky and thick, which is just what you want. And then you can just throw in as many chocolate chips as you want. You can use regular chocolate chips, you can use mini chocolate chips. If you really want to get colorful, you can even use white or rainbow chocolate chips. And then you just give it a mix again with your hands. And then if you make these for the holiday, especially, and you want them to look nice, I put them in these little baking cups. So you basically shape it into a ball, and it helps to wet your hands. So if you put water in, it makes it a little easier. So you put water in a cup and just dip your hands in it and then roll it into a ball. So it's about like a golf size ball shape. And you can put it in these pretty little cups. And then basically you put it in the refrigerator so it gets a little harder. And then you eat it. It's a win-win situation because you don't have to bake it. You don't have to cook it. It's very easy to make. And again, what's important to me is that a lot of the recipes that I make are kid friendly because I do a lot of cooking and baking with my grandson. And then when it's done and hardened already, then it looks like oh, I'll show you the one. And they look like this once they're done and they've hardened in the refrigerator a little bit. So not much of a difference between the one I made today and the ones that are in the fridge. They're just a little harder. And that is the end of the date balls and the honey cake. And that's about it. Any questions?
Actually, no surprise, I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you were making the date balls, it reminded me of something called mocha butter balls. I'm just saying, so then I wondered, do you ever dust with powdered sugar or any other dusting thing on the outside?
I haven't done that with these, but you certainly, there's no reason why you couldn't, and it would look pretty.
I mean, it also
sure.
occurred to me for people who like cinnamon, the dusting could be with like a cinnamon powdered sugar to intensify the cinnamon, or
Yeah,
even more.
yeah, it could be with cinnamon sugar or even just plain cinnamon. I've made balls out of old cake that's been sitting around. I've made rum balls, and those ones I do roll in powdered sugar or cinnamon. But yeah, there's no reason you couldn't do it with this as well. And it's a really healthy treat, you know, because especially
And it's
for the
7
kids.
species. It's 7 species.
Yeah, and it has, well, I don't think it has all 7 of them, but it certainly has
No,
some.
but it's I'm sorry, it's one of the 7 species, which a little
Yes.
thrown in for Tu B'Shvat with the almonds.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it makes a good holiday treat for Tu B'Shvat, for Sukkot, for Rosh Hashanah, for all the holidays, and just for every day. So that's about it. Thank you all for joining us. Ari, any other last minute information?
Actually, could I ask you one more? Sorry. 'Cause
Sure.
I sometimes think figs are a similar consistency with dates. Have you ever tried fig balls?
I have not tried it with figs, but I will certainly do that before Sukkot, and I will keep you posted as to whether it comes out as good.
The big thing on that would be if your grandson likes figs the way he likes dates.
It's always it has to be something that he likes, but he does like dried fruits of any kind. So yeah, but we'll make it with figs, and then we'll give you a review and see how it goes.
Ooh, I can't wait.
My mom and I actually make we make charoset balls that have dates and figs in them, which are it's a fun little way to do charoset a little bit differently.
Oh, and that's really fun. I know, because everybody in the recording needs to know this. My whole lifetime, I'm anaphylactic shock allergic to nuts except almonds. So at Pesach, I have to be very careful. And when I'm used to, before pandemic, go places where I went most often, that particular friend who always does 6 kinds of charoset anyway, because she likes doing from different diaspora, would always have like a Mizrahi charoset that was date, figs, things like that.
Right.
Sometimes
fruits.
even like curried to make sure I could eat one.
Huh. Yeah, but you can always, you can always substitute different kinds of nuts. Just because the traditional charoset involves walnuts doesn't mean it has to be.
Yep. Well,
Okay.
this was amazing, Renee. Thank you so much for wrapping up our Elul learning series in such a delicious way. And thank you all for joining. And Tybal, I can say it now that we are ending, and right before I turn off the Zoom, you do win the gold star for Elul learning series. You came to all but Rabbi Shapiro's that was in person only. So mazel tov to you for that, and thank you for joining. It was very helpful to me for some of our smaller classes. So I really appreciate you being so engaged and being there. And Renee, again, thank you so much for doing
my
this.
pleasure.
And Ari,
And I look forward to us
to
cooking again in the future.
It was a joy to get to know you more, actually.
Likewise.
Because February, I was like, oh, I don't think I really, met you Zoom meeting until the Elul series. So I think that was a lovely thing for me anyway.
Well, I am very grateful to both of you and your commitment to our community. And thank you again for being a part of this. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, wishing you all a happy and a healthy new year.
Shana Tova Metuka, and thank you very much for sharing and always ready to be there for everyone during the holiday time and giving your heart and putting your heart and soul into everything you do. I love you. Thank you so much.
Okay.